I'll never forget shooting that video, putting it up online. I had recently gotten into Reddit at that time. I don't know if it still is, but Reddit at that time was like one of the 3 or 5 most visited websites in the world. And I had just gotten really into Reddit, and we put up that video. And the next morning, I woke up in my room and opened up Reddit, and the top of the front page, number one entry, was a Washington Post article covering our video. And what a surreal moment. And I was like, okay, you can have on Reddit, like there's everything. And then there's just your customized view. It's like, okay, surely this is just like the music subreddit and it's like my view and like, hey, that's awesome. Somebody saw it. No, it was the number one thing on Reddit, and it was a Washington Post article. And that was the moment of like, I think things are about to change for us.
That's wild. So that's in 2012. You guys released a video in which all 5 members are playing one guitar, and you do a cover of Gotye's "Somebody That I Used to Know." And within 4 months, this video has 175 million views, which I mean, what does that even mean? It's so many numbers. And now today, the video that's been uploaded on a few different accounts combined has 215 million views. Uh, Almost no human being will ever experience that level of success, like that pinpoint moment where something is a global sensation. Can you share what your life was like at the very pinnacle of that?
Dude, that whole first year was just such a blur. It was literally just like, so at that time, Wout didn't even have like official management. Like we at that time we ended up calling the managers of the Creep Show, Stomp Records out of Montreal, they were like, things were exploding. We had to just like figure something out immediately. Like they immediately jumped on a plane, flew out to Burlington. We set up in Johnny's living room and just like went through it all. And it wasn't really too long after that we were just on planes for the rest of the year going around. One of the first things we did was go out to Germany actually, and in addition to kind of all this sort of like who do we want to sign with or whatever, there was just all these appearances, right? TV and like going down and doing Ellen and all this sort of crazy stuff in this first year. It was a total blur. Definitely like sitting down my family and saying, as this guy who had just dropped out of school, and my parents are starting to get a little nervous about like what's going on here. Where's this all? I think for school, even in isolation for supportive parents, is like at least he's on a track and and he'll have something to show for it. I think coming home was tough for them because it was like, what now? Um, Sitting them down and saying, hey, we're going to do Ellen, was crazy. I say this too, which is funny. All the like sort of international stuff obviously was incredible, but like to get the first front page of the Burlington Post hits different, man. I swear. Like there's something
That
about
slaps.
that that normalization effect of like, here's this Washington Post headline, and here's us on Ellen, and here's us flying out to Germany and doing their version of like Jimmy Kimmel out there and everything. But to come home and see it on a newspaper that we look at every day, and but we're on there, was like honestly, I would say is one of the pinnacle moments of that first year, because it was that, and like actually to my boomer parents who still weren't really understanding like the value of like digital and that being kind of the new medium, for us to start getting radio play, conventional terrestrial radio play, they were like, holy like that was, for them and for a lot of my family who were small towners from Paris and Brantford, that moment of like, I heard you on the radio today. It's like they don't care that we got 200 million views. They heard us on the radio. So that now we're a big deal.
I remember being 16 and working at a gas station and looking down, and on the cover of the newspaper, there was this young blonde kid, and it says, "This is the future of whatever." And it was Ryan Gosling as a kid who was maybe just doing the Mickey Mouse show, something like that. And he was from Cornwall, just a few cities over. And that's the equivalent. You guys are the Ryan Gosling of Burlington, is what I'm trying to say.
Dude, if I'm the Ryan Gosling of anything, sign me up. Sign me up. Isn't Jim Carrey? I know Jim Carrey went to school for a portion of his young life in Burlington, but he's from the area as well, I believe. Like it's just nonstop talent out of Canada, man.
Alanis Morissette, Ottawa. So talking about Ellen, so you guys recreated the 5 musicians on one instrument live on Ellen. How hard is it to actually pull off that song in that format?
Really tough. Really, really tough. I mean, the video itself took 50 plus takes, right? Just to get things feeling comfortable and everything. So to go out there on, she had probably the single biggest daytime television platform at that time, right? So to go out there, well, everything's going nuts and our brains are like split in every direction because there's so much like, yes, we're there in Ellen, but then we got to go and fly and do all these other million things and all this crazy stuff. It was a lot and definitely not our best performance of it, but it was what it was, and it was that first holy shit moment certainly for us of getting a chance to go and do that, and we move on from there. Ellen was sick at the time, so she wouldn't. I remember she fist bumped us. She wouldn't give a handshake because she was sick at the time. And that was also on a Thursday, which I believe she shot 2 back-to-back episodes, so she could have Friday off, and her team get a Friday off. Although who knows now? Maybe she kept all of her team there on Fridays and over the weekends. Who knows what the real story is there? But she gave us all guitars, and the joke was that I know you guys can't afford your own guitar each, so hey, we got you one for each of you, so you don't have to share one guitar anymore.
That's amazing. And rumor has it that the session where it took you guys like 50 takes to get the final video that went viral, that was like 14 hours. Can you speak about that? And when you got the final take, did you know you had something special? Like, could you have ever imagined that it would have gone on to do what it did?
Right. Yeah. It was definitely a marathon day. 14 sounds conservative, to be honest. By the way, as well, MC Beard Guy Mike Taylor wasn't ever supposed to be in the video. We set that up and arranged that as a 4-person situation. He just happened to kind of, when we were on hour 10, 11, 12, he was touching base and saying, "How's it going?" I think he was trying to just chat with us, and we were not getting back to him. We were like, "Dude, we're still going for it over here." He just showed up, 11th hour style, literally 11th hour, and that wound up being probably like the most viral element of the whole video, right? But I don't think we actually, there's some videos where, especially ones that are like high stakes and where there's like, really moving variables involved. Usually in that sense, when you got it, and it's like a huge relief moment or a huge celebration moment. I don't think there was that with that one. I think we were so sort of like just like zoned by hour 12, 13, 14 that it wasn't until we were watching things back that we said, this is the one. By the way, as well, like none of us thought it was going to be some breakthrough video of any sort, which I think there's something to be said about that. You hear about people, whether it's a hit song or a hit, really anything, that was one thing that they just tossed out into the world and they moved on, and they're 5 projects later, they hear that went out and ended up doing crazy things. That was definitely the experience for us. We put it out there. We thought it'd be cool, but we didn't necessarily think it was going to be this. How can you really expect that, right? It's even back then, let alone today, trying to get a video to go viral. But how can you expect that it's going to do that? We just thought, cool, this is going to be another thing. Let's move on. Let's plan out the next shoot. Let's plan out the next shows. Let's figure out the next stuff. And it just stopped us all in our tracks, and we just had to just ride that wave. And I say ride the wave, but what I really mean is work our asses off. I should really make sure to delineate those two, because at the same time, our video took off. That kind of same month, there was this lady who was crying on the toilet about how much she loved her cat or something, and she sang this little song, and she ended up like selling shirts. Props to her. She like capitalized as much as she could. But I think about that a lot too, because it's like she had actual 15 minutes, right? She had her 15 minutes. She made a couple bucks, I'm sure, on the shirts or whatever, and then she was gone. Us as a group of folks who truly never thought we were gonna get a chance to make it at this level, right? We all wanted to, we all hoped to, but as if, right, just by the numbers, right? Most people assume that that's just never going to happen. Same with like pro sports or anything like that, right? It's just like, I guess the difference here being that like we're an independent band that is having success, that we need to kind of like drive ourselves here, right? So case in point, the blow up happens, and it's like there was this kind of collective, let's buckle the hell down here. And like this 15 minutes that we've got right now, we are going to stretch that into, literally, I can say that now, stretch it into 15 years plus, out of sheer stubbornness, determination, hard work, and just like willingness to want to always keep eyes on what's coming next. I think, whether that's a new social media platform or a new format that's working and it's really sticky amongst new viewers, or any combination of things that involve staying tapped in and staying finger on the pulse and staying current. I think we've done a hell of a job at continuing to put the work in to be able to test those waters enough to be able to stay in people's faces, really. I mean, isn't that what it's all about these days, right? Attention economy. If we're not doing our best to get in people's faces and grab their attention on the doom scroll on the timeline, someone else is going to come and take that spot. And there sure is no shortage of especially these days, talent out there, that people that could come by and steal that attention away from us. So I think that if nothing else, that work ethic, that sort of unwillingness to want to not have this life and hold on to this life and create new opportunities for ourselves over all these years, despite losing members, despite X, Y, and Z ups and downs, I think we continue to kind of default to a spot that is what's next, what's going on, what's the next thing, and how do we action it. And for as much as it's been nice to, as a group that started by doing wearing every hat ourselves, it's nice to have, we have our studio in Burlington now, and we have a couple of folks who are in there helping us out and doing that and working for us. But by and large, we are still wearing every hat ourselves, and that's just kind of the way we've always done it, and the way that we've been able to ensure that everything goes out with the right WOTE stamp on it. So I don't think that that'll ever go away, even though, like I said, we're grateful to have more help these days, but that's really just more because the volume of output has increased as such, and it's kind of past the point of any one of us being able to hold down on our own. So yeah.
Can I point out that if you guys locked in your final performance of that song in under 10 hours, there'd be no mic in that video?
Exactly, man. What does that say about going with the flow and just kind of like
Yeah.
gut, right? Like we knew we didn't have it yet at that time. And truthfully, yeah, like now that I think back on it that you're mentioning, it's like him being that missing piece. There's a great chance that we should honestly, I should ask you, we should look back at the pre-MT takes, because we
You
probably
should see exactly what moment he comes in for the first time.
we probably had a couple banger takes in there as the four of us, but something about it wasn't feeling like we had nailed it yet. And when he showed up, we had it within a couple hours. So man, that's a really good point.
When when you think about that number, 215 million views on that video, can you even try to grasp what that means? For example, I don't know what day it is today, Thursday. Tuesday, I went to the Sens game. So the Ottawa Arena is right down the street, and that's say 22,000 people. So, I look around the arena and, I just saw Our Lady Peace there, and it's like, okay, this is what 22,000 people look like. That is an insane amount of people. And then I go to the Rogers Center and see Roger Waters, and there's, I don't know what that is, 55,000 people. And it's like, okay, you can grasp what that number is. So 55,000 people in a stadium is an unbelievable amount of people. Now try to think 215 million. That's like, what is that, 20 times the population of Canada? Like if you took all of every person in Canada and put them all together, and then you did 20 times that amount, that's how many people watch that video. I don't want to explode your mind or anything, but what do those numbers mean to you, if anything?
Man, one thing I'll say as well is that like that might be the numbers on aggregate for like the different uploads of that on YouTube, but there were a bunch of years, it's changed since certainly, of course, but there were a bunch of years where Facebook video reposting was like out of control. Like we at one point tried to just track that. People like they weren't policing it at all. It was really tough. YouTube obviously got on top of that pretty heavily. Facebook never did. And like we're talking like easily conceivably in the billions of views in terms of like at one point we've tracked down like 300 reposts that all had views in the millions, right? So like you extrapolate from there, and it's absurd that you can't possibly quantify it or relate to it in any reasonable human way when you see those numbers, and you think of the fact that like our videos have been viewed easily billions of times, right, by people in the furthest stretches of the globe. And it's like I think we try not to think about it because it's a total trip. It's wild to be able to have reached that many people, and really the hope is that we've been able to inspire. My biggest thing is like my proudest achievement as an artist is like hearing back from others that our music was able to inspire them in the same way that probably Blink 182 back in the day and what the Mars Volta did to me, right? So that is something I like to focus on a little more, but you can definitely get lost in the numbers. And yeah, it's an insane number and an irrelatable number by any human measure. But then you go around the world and you like sell out rooms for the first time visiting a country you've never been to before that doesn't speak the same language as you. And then it starts to make a little more sense in terms of like, yeah, this is really caught on, and this is really allowing us to do something that the previous generation of artists literally was like, that wasn't possible. You had to go through the well-defined label system. You had to have a big hit record. You had to be selling tons of physical copies. You probably, even with all that in mind, you probably still had to have gone through a place before and built up that kind of live track record. We're in a position now where you have that right viral hit, and you can go and sell at a tour of places you've never been before on your first time through. You know, that never used to be a thing. So crazy.
And what thoughts, memories, emotions come back to you now when you think back to that period in time that kickstarted this 15-year journey of success that you've been on?
Man, I just think I think there's a lot to back to kind of the theme of trying not to overthink shit all the time, especially as an artist. And that just I think that's something that plagues a lot of artists. There's something in me that, you know, knowing that it was gonna make my parents uncomfortable as the people who were so supportive of me going into it in the first place and always have been so supportive of my music career, to think about the fact that even with that in mind, something at a gut feeling level wasn't sitting right with me about the path that I had started on there with music school and the whole thing, and starting to step back and starting to focus more on myself as a live performer and stuff was scratching this itch that felt really good and that I wanted to explore more and more and more of. So I would say, beyond anything else, the fact that that little inclination, following that gut and going with that, and really just trying to prioritize that over everything else, realistically is what has led me to the life and career that I've been able to have with this. And as a serially anxious person and someone who's battled with, you know, anxiety and depression a bunch, to think back to that, leaving the safe, once again, even in isolation, the safe surrounding of a music school, and saying no, you know, there's something else out there for me that I'm going to really just kind of go for. That's what's required in actually having an opportunity like this, I think, right? Is hitting that point where you say, if you've been fortunate enough to experience something in life that feels really good and really is satisfying, creatively fulfilling, and whatever that is, and say, that's it, that's what I want, I'm going to go for that, regardless of what it takes, regardless of how long it takes. I'm going to make sacrifices, I'm going to do whatever I need to do to get there, because isn't that what life's about, right? Not everyone is a passionate person. I think about that sometimes too. Not everyone has something that they wake up in the morning and they're so excited to dive into, right? So to be a passionate person to begin with, let alone to then start to see a path for yourself that might actually allow you to get to this point where you might get a chance to live your dream. I might get a chance to feel some of the feelings that Travis Barker or John Bonham, I was going to say John Theodore from the Mars Volta, that those guys got a chance to live, because maybe at a certain point in their life they said, I'm going all in on this. And that's the possibility, more so than ever these days, of what can happen when you decide to go all in on something. Alex Hormozy, I'm sure you know who that guy is. He's like a business entrepreneurship. He's awesome, right? He's like, you got your like Tony Robbinses and like Grant Cardones that are like always trying to
He's
sell
the
you.
new guy, right? The $100 million deal book and all that.
Hormozy is like just so straight up, and he's not trying to sell you. I think he actually is probably trying to sell you stuff, but it doesn't feel that way. It feels like your buddy chatting. And one of the things he says is, what sets apart the people that make it and the people that don't is how long you're willing to be uncomfortable. How long are you willing to stew in discomfort, knowing that bigger risk, bigger reward, right, is what's ahead of you if you can stick with that longer than most. And I think that's a perfect encapsulation of the artist's journey, and hitting a point where it says, okay, let me go the safe bet. Maybe I got a kid on the way. Maybe X, Y, and Z. I have dependents where I need a more reliable income or any variation of that. Yeah, but even with all that stuff in mind, I need to think about, when I'm on my deathbed and I think back to the decisions I made and the path that I put myself on, am I going to be happy with the decisions that I made when I'm wrapping up my time on earth here, right? I think about that a lot too. And that's yet again another thing that you think about a whole lot. I am certainly anyway, with a child now too. So lot to be said, I guess, to answer your question, a lot to be said for going with the gut. And it gets thrown around a lot. It's a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason, because there's a lot of people in positions of getting a chance to live their dreams and create amazing things from nothing, that wouldn't be in those positions had they not said, you know, do I do this? Do I go out on a limb? Do I risk it all for my ultimate satisfaction and happiness?
My final question about the viral video. After the video goes viral, the two artists on that song, Gotye and Kimbra, both posted positive responses to your version. Is it special when the actual artist shows that they love what you did? Because maybe you love it, but every now and then you'll see an artist where the original artist is like, yeah, I hate new metal. I hate that cover. I hate whatever. So to get the actual green light from the artist themselves. And that was the single best selling song of 2012 as well.
So some people don't know that song went on to win the Record of the Year Grammy, right? And obviously in the U.S. that year, that song in 2011 had already had its own rise and fall. Gotye is from Belgium originally, lives in Australia, and that song had already won its awards, had its run, been through the radio cycle, the whole thing at that time. So I mean, it feels weird to say this, but like we sort of gave the song, we gave ourselves a career in the process, but we sort of gave the song a new bit of life, a new bit of sort of spotlight in North America that wound up kind of leading it on this path to him coming over here and selling an amphitheater run his first time over in North America and getting that Grammy and everything. So when it first happened, it first took off, it was funny because like between artists, between us and between him and Kimber and stuff, it was just all pure positivity and love. And like everyone is obviously having a huge win here. So it's great. Behind the scenes, we had just signed with Columbia Records at that time, and he was with Universal, and behind closed doors there were like lawsuits aplenty happening between like at that time labels didn't like it when a cover version or a repost of something, back to the Facebook thing, got more views than the original. We actually encountered this with our cover of Closer by the Chainsmokers as well. It was all like they reposted it at first, the whole thing all positive and all love initially. And then it's like, wait a minute, this is doing a little better than we want to see. And then it gets like, the right legal team can complicate anything that might not have otherwise needed to be complicated in terms of were we licensing our downloadable, sellable versions of that song correctly? Oh, maybe we weren't, or maybe they want more because of this song has done this for our career, or X, Y, and Z. It got actually quite complicated. I was dating a girl from Australia at the time who I met in New York City, and I went out to visit her back home in Australia. Got a chance to see Wally Gotye in Melbourne, was his hometown. No, we saw him in Sydney actually. He's from Melbourne, and see him and chat with him after. And same thing. It was like, what a warm guy, what a nice guy. It was a purely positive exchange. But we both knew going into that exchange that it was like a legal shitstorm happening. I think the vibe was like, let's let the people who do that for a job deal with that right now, and let's just celebrate. By the way, like he played that song middle of the set. He hears him playing in his home territory, middle of the set. Didn't get a huge reaction beyond the other stuff. It's such a different dynamic over there compared to coming from the part of the world that this song was everywhere possible and was still exploding and everything. Middle of the show, nothing crazy. It was clear that, like, really weird too to experience the fact that that song had already had its moment over there, despite having its first giant moment in North America at that time.
It's funny, the artists themselves, like the Chainsmokers and Gotye, they love the creativity and the honor of someone covering their song. But then you have the machine behind it that's like, okay, how do we monetize this? So, yeah, I think Gotye'd be happy with you made him a 250 million viewed music video essentially for his song. And gave him your version is a platinum hit in Canada. It was a top 10 hit on the Dutch charts. So I think he's cool with it. I think he's all good. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's talked about having nothing but respect for people who are that true artist above all else, especially above the business side. I don't know if you're aware, like in the years following, like that was like a moment for him where like all eyes were on, and he had a chance to be like massive in the States and in the whole thing. And what he did after he made all his money on that and everything was like get his like childhood band back, like his like teenage band back together, and they just go on like I'm sure it's small means like playing multi-thousand cappers, but like they basically just kind of tour around, to my knowledge, tour around like Europe and Asia and Australia and do their thing. And he's really kind of like made a cognizant step back from what would otherwise have been him basically going the like pop star route, I guess, really, but by and large. So you got to respect that as well, because he clearly got a funny feeling from being so exposed and so close to the kind of seedy underbelly of the industry. And it's like that one guy, what was his name, Taylor something, that won American Idol the one year, and the guy who was like a crooner singer, right, from like New Orleans or something, and he won. And then he saw the contract and saw the deal points and met all the people, all the slimy folks, and was like, dude, no, like I'm going back home for this. What are you doing? Like, you got to respect that. So my understanding, I could be wrong, but my understanding is that Wally actually, that's the path he took after all was said and done, and the kind of dust had settled from all the chaos of somebody that I used to know.
Before moving on, I just have to mention that listening to somebody that I used to know with a good pair of headphones, it might be my favorite mix and production of a song ever. So I don't know if you've ever like really soaked that song in, but it's absolute genius. There's so many like little things coming and going and moving, and then there's vocal tags. Somebody like that'll come in after, and it's the mix itself is alive. There's like a living organism that is that song while you listen, and the harmonies. And as it goes, all the little elements that have been coming in and out and ear candy and tickling and all that, as the song goes, they're all layering back in so that by the end, everything that had been there at some point is all in together, including the vocal tags, now the harmonies, now both singers are on it. And it sounds like there's strange instruments and harmonics. And I just have to point out that someone that went school for audio engineering, it's that's the chef's kiss. Like that might be the absolute pinnacle of a mix and production with headphones on.
It's so easy to overproduce things, especially these days, right? With samples and all the tools that are out there. It's really tough to make something that's simple, that doesn't actually have a whole lot going on, be so satisfying and be have so much success and have such a connection. So I think, yeah, totally, man. I've listened to it a million times, and that sort of story and journey of a song, exactly right, of sort of jumping through the hoops that your average listener has become attuned to, just listening to pop music or whatever, that ticks all those boxes, but then still has a certain je ne sais quoi to it, right? That's like there's this magical X factor that, yeah. And certainly shouts to Wally on that one too, because he very much like was like self-produced that whole album's worth of stuff. I think basically all of his stuff. And a guy like that was like, whether he had somebody mix and master separate, was in those rooms too, just making sure that every detail was perfect. So yeah, that's I love, dude. Let's not even go down the path of geeking out about audio stuff, because totally, that's like, once again, to have something that can breathe and has tons of space but still feels whole and full and unique and interesting, despite being using the same 12 pitches as anything else. And no one's going to ever invent a new chord progression, but the way the sounds are designed and the way the whole thing is structured and slow dripped throughout is just like, yeah, like you said, masterful.